Nintendo.
With Halloween around the corner and Luigi's Mansion 3 coming out soon, I thought I'd finally finish the original that launched with the GameCube back in 2001. I feel like that 6th generation of consoles had most experimentation going on. Nowadays, whenever we get something weird, it's just weird for the sake of it. But back in the early 2000s, publishers were throwing anything at the wall hoping it would be a system seller. Games didn't need to sell 8 million copies back then to be profitable because every wart and nose didn't have to be ray traced. Microsoft had just thrown their hat in the ring with the Xbox, and Sony was just starting their 2nd generation of consoles with the PlayStation 2. This was while Nintendo and Sega started to trail behind because they were no longer the only major console companies anymore. The GameCube had a decent launch lineup in North America, but it was lacking a Mario or Zelda title. Everyone was expecting a new Mario 64 or that darker Zelda game that was shown off in press shows. Instead, they got this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
A lot of Nintendo fans hated this game when it came out. There's endless forum posts about it, and critics didn't shine to it well either, despite every Nintendo game getting endless praise nowadays. It's been about 18 years, and the game has gotten a bit of a following. Despite its mixed reception, it's sold well enough to get a sequel, 12 years later. So let's dive into it. Is this game a product of its time? Or is it actually a really interesting, underrated gem on the GameCube? Let's find out. The story for Luigi's Mansion is actually pretty cool. Luigi wins a mansion in a contest he didn't enter. Upon entry, he realizes the entire place is haunted, and his brother is missing somewhere inside. He meets a scientist named Professor Egad. You might recognize the name. He invented this staff and flood device from Super Mario Sunshine. A neat bit of continuity there. Egad tells Luigi that the only way to stop the ghosts are to press them into paintings. Egad gives Luigi the tool to capture ghosts. A vacuum cleaner. Yes. It's up to Luigi to save his brother and purge the mysterious mansion of its ghostly inhabitants. Let's talk about the most striking thing about Luigi's Mansion. The art style. The best way to describe it is how the lines are drawn. Instead of straight lines to make boxy objects, you get a lot more curves here. This makes the mansion itself, and the things you find inside of it, have a bit of a uniqueness to it. Look at the chests. How about this hallway? The dick ugly boomer furniture. The ghosts are also a big part. Despite having contrasting colors, the ghosts use darker shades, so they aren't super transparent either. They are still colorful, but they aren't over-stylized like another game. Some might say that the ghosts of the residents of the mansion, that's a sentence, haven't aged well in design, and I kind of agree. They are a product of that time period in the early 2000s of cartoony CGI, but they still have that creepiness to them without looking goofy, so the effect is still intact. The graphics and effects hold up surprisingly well. I'm playing on an emulator, but under an HD lens, the lighting is still nice. The textures are clean, and the sound design enhances everything. As kids, me and my brother were sucked into the game's dark atmosphere. This was one of the few games I didn't actually own, rather my little brother did. I'd always watch him play, so I basically knew most of the game before beating it as an adult. It was scary as a kid playing. Now, as adults, the game doesn't scare us anymore, but we can appreciate the environments even more now. It's also got a comfy vibe to it, playing as an adult. The game also has a ton of charm despite being a horror game. The writing is fun, and Luigi's very expressive as a character, from facial expressions to even more subtle stuff. I will never get tired of that. That is awesome. As for the gameplay, you've got a mixture of Ghostbusters and Resident Evil 1. The gameplay loop is as follows. You stun a ghost by shining light on it. Once this happens, their actual hearts are revealed, with a life number attached to it. You pull out your vacuum and start going to town. Pulling the analog stick away from where Luigi is facing sucks the ghost in faster, and that brings the life bar down. Eventually, it'll suck the ghost up into the vacuum cleaner. The combat is pretty repetitive, so there are these little additions to fluff it up and make it a little bit more enjoyable. Some ghosts can only be stunned after hitting them with elemental damage. You gain the ability to shoot water, ice, and fire at different points of the game. The mansion is once again similar to Resident Evil 1. Lots of doors and shortcuts in a spooky mansion. Some might call it a Metroidvania, but it's still very linear. You can skip content in this game, but it's never out of the way. So the gameplay is a bit repetitive, but the idea of collecting keys and abilities in a haunted mansion is pretty cool. There's also trap doors that can kill you, which is also a nice touch. The best part is figuring out how to defeat a boss ghost. Sometimes it's not as clear as shining your flashlight, you gotta interact with the environment to get the boss's attention. There's all kinds of traps in the environment as well as secrets, so it'll take you around 8 hours to find everything. The game doesn't feel poorly paced either, so that's nice. The sad part is, for a launch title, people criticized it for being too short. So I've talked about the good parts of Luigi's Mansion, but it's not without its flaws, so let's get into the problems. These goddamn boos are annoying. When you suck up every ghost in a room, the room lights up, but there's a boo hiding somewhere, and your boo radar will start flashing yellow, playing a game of hot and cold. In order to beat the game, you need to suck up 40 of the 50 boos in the mansion, but they don't appear right away. They hide. So what you need to do is hump everything you see. Furniture, crates, everything. Sometimes they put up decoys or traps. Once you get them to appear, you gotta catch them before they escape. But some have massive health pools, so they will escape to another room or hallway. The worst is when they escape to a room that's locked and you can't unlock it until later. Sometimes they go from a hallway through a wall with no door on it. So you gotta go all the way around through another room to get a few seconds to catch that boo again, only for it to escape back into the hallway and repeat the whole damn process all over again. Another annoying thing is that there's never more than one up at a time, so sometimes multiple boos can hide in the same room. So you gotta find one, catch it, then run back to the same room to find the next one, despite looking in the same spots minutes ago. You can't capture 3 at once or 2 at once. You've gotta do it one at a time. It's stupid. This leads me into another problem. The controls. The GameCube's dual analog setup is not ideal. Metroid Prime and Resident Evil 4 are the most notable shooters on the system because they didn't use the C-stick for aiming. This tiny convex nub. You use the C-stick for aiming the flashlight and poltergust in this game, and it just feels so stiff.
Breadsticks all day, nigga, you just got pranked!
You're gonna constantly miss your mark with sucking up ghosts if they aren't directly in front of you. I didn't even realize Luigi has a soft auto-lock system going on, so you're never gonna notice that if you're jerking the stick around. And until I got to the end of the game, I didn't realize that, and my brother never noticed it in his 3 playthroughs of the game. It still doesn't matter, catching the boos is still a chore, as is the other ghosts, but at least with the other ghosts you can kind of lock on and just pull them around. The boos don't really lock you on, they don't pull you around. Also, with how the ghosts drag you around, you're bound to bump into shit when they have more than 25 health points. Sometimes I will start sucking one up, and I'll immediately get rammed into a table or chair, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's a dirty sentence. Let's keep moving on.
Oh yeah.
It makes me feel like I have less control over an already simplistic combat system. Overall, I think Luigi's Mansion is still a pretty cool game that was just put under way too much scrutiny because it was a launch title for the GameCube. There was a solid base here for something better, but despite selling extremely well for a GameCube title, Nintendo waited 12 years to make a sequel on 3DS. Hey, at least we got one. Dark Moon is a game I haven't played much of, but right away it's apparent that they ditched the best parts of the first game. Yes, the game on paper has better controls, graphics, and sound, and damn does it have some good sound if you have headphones on, but it also has a more generic art style with brighter color palettes rather than the creepypasta CGI and effects that we all know and love. They also decided to go for a mission structure rather than a more persistent mansion hub, but you do explore different mansions. If you're in the market for something different this Halloween, Luigi's Mansion for GameCube is a fun game. It's got its problems, but it still managed to be entertaining. I also say if you're a GameCube nut like me, it's worth checking out, or maybe you've got kids and you want to introduce them to their first horror game. Regardless, it's a neat game despite its flaws. There was a port of this game released on 3DS, but some still argue for the original, and apparently if you're playing on an old 3DS without the new analog nub, the controls are arguably worse than the GameCube original, so bear that in mind. The third game is coming out this Halloween, and while they're not going back to the original art style, it is looking better than Dark Moon. If I get my hands on it, and you guys are interested, I'll do a quick video on it. Just leave a comment or a like to show interest. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a happy and safe Halloween. I'll see you next time. I'm out.